discuss the things that matter to them, whether it's face-to-face or online. In our Sunday with BELTA webinar series, we are connecting Belgian teachers to the wider world of ELT by bringing our members together with teachers from around the world to watch presentations from international speakers. So hello to all our members and to those of you joining us from outside Belgium too. So before we begin, I just want to mention next year's BELTA Day, our annual conference in Brussels, which will be on April 25th. If you're interested in speaking at the conference, go to our website to find out more about how you can put in a proposal. Okay, so in this month's webinar, we are joined by Marek Kiczkowiak. Marek has worked as a teacher and teacher trainer in various countries and is currently based in the Netherlands, where he started a freelance business teaching English, Spanish and Polish. He's a passionate blogger and a staunch advocate of equal employment rights for non-native English speaker teachers. He founded the TEFL Equity Advocates, which campaigns against the discrimination against non-native English speaker teachers in TEFL. So today Marek will be talking about concept checking. As he says in his abstract, after you have introduced and clarified the meaning of new language, it might be a good idea to check your students have actually understood you, which sounds very sensible to me. So please join me in welcoming Marek for Do You Understand? Effective Ways of Concept Checking. Over to you, Marek.
All right. Hi, everyone. Great to see people from different countries. So quite very pleased to be giving this webinar. And if I'm speaking too quickly, please let me know. Or if there's some glitches and you can't understand because of the internet connection, just let me know as well, please. Or if you've got any questions, you can also raise your hand during the webinar, and I'll do my best to answer your question. So the first, this is the outline. The first thing that we're going to look at is very briefly when would we normally concept check and what kind of language. And then we are going to look at 7 different ways of concept checking. And while we're looking at them, we'll also do some practice. And finally, at the very end, there will be also another practice. So I hope that this presentation will turn out to be practical enough, and that you will get some ideas that you can use straight away in your Monday classes, perhaps next week. So first, when do we concept check? Can you quickly try and write any ideas in the chat box, please? When would you concept check? After explaining something, says Tyson. After elicitation, David. So we've elicited vocabulary or grammar after introducing vocabulary. Yeah, that's the first point that I've got here. After, as part of clarification. But also we can probably do it as a revision or a way to elicit the language. And what kind of language do we usually concept check? Can you write some ideas, please, as well in the chat box? What type of language can we concept check? Target language, grammar, anything? Purpose, vocabulary? The grammatical aspect? Okay, yeah. We can concept check vocabulary, these words to avoid hitting a pedestrian. There can be some phrasal verbs I have to put up with lazy students or idiomatic expressions. even though he's shown he's a great basketball player, so we can concept check as well those linking expressions. That can't have been him. So some kind of grammar or lexis kind of not really sure what to call it. And yeah, and typical sort of what we would think as grammar. I'm going to France next month. So let's look first at probably the most popular technique of concept checking, and that's CCQs, concept checking question. And I've got a first example here for you. I bumped into an old friend yesterday. Can you come up with perhaps 3 CCQs, please? For bumped into, how would you concept check it using CCQs? Did you meet your friend by accident, says Julia? Did I see an old friend? Yes, no questions. Did I hurt him? Did you expect to meet your friend? Yeah, I think you're on the right track. I think perhaps that's the questions that Julia and David suggested. They already encompass the whole concept, and you might want to. What I suggested is to start first. Did I meet a friend yesterday? So the basic meaning of meeting, and then was it planned? No, and wasn't an accident? Yes. So I've tried to make the CCQs much shorter than that, and we'll look at some tips for CCQs in a minute. And let's look at another example. As a kid, I used to play football a lot. And can you please try and make them shorter? So maybe if you can have 2 or 3 CCQs for this use case. Do I still play football? Okay. No. Mm-hmm. How old were you? That doesn't really check the target language. You play now? Yeah, that's a good question as well. Do I play football now? Yeah, definitely. Did you play football often? Yeah. When did you play football? That doesn't really check the target language, I think. Okay, let's. You've all had some pretty good ideas here. This is what I suggested. Do I play football a lot now? No. Did I do so in the past? Yes. Was it a repeated or once only action? It was a repeated action. So let's look at some common pitfalls and some common problems when we come up with CCQs. Can you perhaps list any of the most common mistakes that people make when they come up with CCQs? In general, not asking about the target language, definitely. Difficult language, yeah, that's a problem as well. Open question, David. Why do you think open questions are wrong? Not specific enough, yeah. It doesn't check to see if the students are capable of using the new language accurately. Okay, yeah. Using the target language in the CCQs, yes, definitely, that's a mistake as well. Okay, let's just see what come up with here. Can you try and identify what's wrong with these CCQs? So the sentence was, another cowboy bites the dust, and there are 3 CCQs. Does the cowboy chew the dust? Does the cowboy eat the dust? Does the cowboy bite the dust? And what's wrong with them? Not checking for meaning? Definitely, yeah. Refers to the literal meaning, yeah, absolutely. Meaning of individual words, yeah, not relevant to the actual meaning, it's all wrong. Yeah, very good, yeah. Question uses the same language as in the example, yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's look at another one. I have to leave early and there are 2 CCQs. Is it incumbent upon me to depart earlier? Is there an external obligation upon me which is forcing me to undertake an action which will take place prior to the time I would normally choose to do it? Language is too difficult, yeah. Verbals, not graded, yeah, too difficult, too long. Okay, well, fantastic. And so here are some of the pitfalls that you've mentioned while we were discussing the previous examples. Some CCQs are just too long and too complex. The language they use is definitely too complex for the students, or more complex than the target language. They use the target language. By the way, is the term target language clear to everybody? Target language is the grammar or vocabulary point that we are. Okay, yeah, it's clear to everybody. CCQs don't check the meaning, like with the cowboy example. The answers to them are not obvious. If we look at the last CCQ with have to, I still don't really understand what the CCQ was about. The CCQs may not be in a logical order. That's another common problem. So let's look at some tips. We've had the mistakes here, the pitfalls. Can you come up with some solutions, perhaps, please? What advice would you give to people when they're trying to write CCQ? Prepare your questions, okay? And how would you prepare your questions? What exactly would you do? Search appropriate vocabulary for your students. Can you maybe explain that, Yannick? What do you mean by that? Research the meaning of the target language. Okay, yeah. And why would you research it? What specifically would you do? It's a good idea to make a list of what you already know from a statement. Okay. Yeah, look up its meaning in an English dictionary. Make sure you ask for the right meaning. One question at a time. Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of you are referring perhaps to my first point here, that you should break down the meaning into simple sentences. So like with bump into, the basic meaning is to meet somebody. You can look up bump into in a dictionary and it will break down the meaning into several constituent parts. So it's to meet somebody when it was not planned and by accident. So you break down this meaning into a couple of simple sentences. You plan your questions, okay, one question at a time. And so these simple meanings can be turned into questions then. And they should probably be short and simple, if possible. And don't use the target language, as we were saying before. And put the questions in a logical order. And the answers should be short and simple. They should be obvious. I think David mentioned before open-ended questions, and we'll discuss them as another concept checking technique later on. But when it comes to CCQs, it would be best if there were either one-word answers or yes or no answers to those questions, and the answer is very obvious. It's not a sort of philosophical question. Okay. Let's do some practice then, shall we? I've got 2 sentences for you. The first one is the girls giggle, and the second one is I might have missed the bus. Can you please come up with CCQs for the first one, just the first sentence, giggle. Think about the sub-meanings of the word giggle and try and break the main meaning into a couple of simple sentences and turn them into questions. Are the girls still giggling? We're not asking about the tense here. Jirka, we're thinking more about the meaning of giggle. How did they laugh? Let's make that question more specific, Fatih. Did the girls laugh? Yeah, okay. Was it a private joke? Were the girls happy? All right, that's a good one. Did they laugh in a childish way? Does giggles have a positive or negative meaning? Something good they are doing? Did they laugh loudly? Okay. So these are my CCQs for the girls giggled. Did they laugh? Yes. Loudly or quietly? Probably quietly. And were they nervous? Probably yes. Another CCQ would be, were they embarrassed? Try and now think about the next one. I might have missed the bus. How would you CCQ that? Did you miss the bus? Okay. Are you sure at the moment of speaking? Did you miss the bus? Are you sure you missed the bus? How are you going to get there then? And that's probably the answer is not very obvious to that. Was there a possibility that you could miss the bus? Can you make that question simpler, Yuria, perhaps? How do you know this? That's a bit philosophical, perhaps. It'd be difficult to answer it. Have you seen the bus drive away? Quite complex, I think. Was it possible? Did you miss the bus? Was it close? All right, James. Yeah, that's good. Is it a fact or your opinion? Not sure. Yeah. Get on the bus. Okay. Let me show you the ones I suggested. I'm not saying these are the only possible answers, right? And the first thing I want to check is that the students know that it refers to the past. So I can ask them past, present, or future. Obviously, it refers to the past. Did I miss the bus? No. Was it probable? Yes. So in here, I try to make the questions as simple as possible, and I try not to use the target language, and the answers are very simple as well. Again, I'm not saying these are the only possibilities, but I think this is something we are aiming at. Simple, short questions that convey all the meanings of the target language. Okay. Let's move on to timelines. If I'm going to, well, we've got a question from Mirka. Can't you say I might have missed the bus when you don't know it yet? When it's the present? Well, we would use it to refer to past situations to make deductions about the past. And so if you were running for the bus now, and it was likely you know it was possible to miss it, and you probably say, oh, I might miss the bus if I don't run quicker. So let's move on to timelines. If I'm going too quickly, or if there are any questions, please let me know and raise your hand or write the question in the chat box. And we've got the first timeline here. I've been living in Holland since October 2012. Should be 2013. Okay. So we've got a picture of a timeline. I hate my handwriting. I think it looks a 5-year-old could write neater than I do. But what suggestions have you got for improving this timeline? it's not the best timeline in the world. So I'd like you, we're not thinking about CCQs anymore, Patty. I do live in Holland now, yes. But how would you improve my timeline? Um, it's not, it's not great, really. Don't worry, Patty. Maybe I didn't explain it correctly. But what's, you know, how can we improve it? How can we make it better? Dotted line. Okay, continuing after now. Good idea. You would use a wave, Julia? Why would you use a wave? An activity? Yeah. Yeah, and it's a continuous activity that's very often suggested in books that we can use a wave, for example, um, for an activity, for a continuous activity. What about the visual appeal of this timeline? Is it visually appealing in any way? Use colors. All right, it's a good suggestion. Need some different colors, more color. Yeah, all right. Or a house. All right. I think you've been looking at my presentation before. You're stealing my ideas. Okay, let's look at the at some tips for timelines. The first one that I've got, and that a couple of people wrote in the chat box, is add colors. So I've added colors here. I made it blue, as you can see. And somebody also suggested a dotted line after now going into the future, because it's very likely that I will continue living in Holland. So the first tip would be to add colors. The second tip would be to add symbols and use them throughout. So somebody suggested, for example, a wavy line, the different symbols you can use, but I think the important thing is that if you choose your symbol, so let's say if you use a wavy line for continuous action, you should always use a wavy line for continuous action so that your students get used to it. And then it's easy to use that symbol for concept checking. You can just draw a wavy line and then students will know straight away what you're referring to. And another symbol that you can use, for example, is a square. I put a square, sorry, a red cross. I put a cross for actions that are completed, or one point actions, and then I use just a box with lines for actions that continue. And I used two colors in here. I was watching football when the phone rang. And so after drawing this, I could just ask my students which color represents watching football, which color represents the phone. Yes, I'll definitely do that, Verla. And I didn't do it here because I'd probably first ask my students what do they think, which action is represented by which color, and then I would underline it. And another tip is to add pictures. I'm not a big drawer myself. I'm definitely not Rembrandt. I'm more of a Picasso on the with a little bit of a shaky hand. But I still try to add some pictures here. I was watching football when the phone rang. Okay, so you can see me there with a pint of beer, watching telly, and then you've got the red phone. That's my image of phone. If you haven't guessed, that's supposed to be a new smartphone. Yeah, that's probably funny. Yeah, whenever my students see my drawings, they just laugh. Um, so, um, so yeah, so add pictures. They don't take too long. It literally takes a minute to draw a simple picture. But I think it just makes the timeline more visual. And finally, you can add some arrows, perhaps. So for example, for a sentence, I'll buy pizza for lunch tomorrow. And I think it's important to establish with will that you make the decision now. And you're going to buy, you will buy pizza tomorrow, but the decision was made now. So that's why I drew a little Marek standing under now, and drew an arrow going to green tomorrow, and then that's blob full of red dots. That's a pizza. That's my impression of pizza. If you haven't as well. As I said, I'm not a big drawer, but I try. So let's practice here. We'll try to draw a timeline, all right? And the first timeline that I'd like you to draw will be for this sentence. I'll be playing football at 8 p.m. on Monday. Could we have the whiteboard, please? All right, fantastic. So ready to go? Have maybe 2 or 3 minutes and try and draw the timeline. I'll be playing football tomorrow. See if you can draw that. Right, great. It's starting to get messy. I like it. Okay, we've got a picture of a little person. Now, right, I can see a couple of balls as well. Good. Okay. Let me show you my suggested answer, perhaps. Thanks a lot, everyone, for contributing to it. Okay, and so oops, actually, sorry, there was a second sentence as well. Maybe you don't have to draw now, but if you can just think, what kind of timeline would you draw for the second sentence? I don't want Ben to get offended that we've forgotten about him. So Ben realized he'd been drinking since Friday. Poor Ben. I wonder how he felt when he realized that. But you don't have to draw now, but just think, what kind of timeline would you draw for sentence number 2? This is my first timeline for I'll be playing football tomorrow on Monday at 8 p.m. Right? So the first thing I try to do is I use my symbol. So I use a cross for an action for a specific point, and then I use a box with lines, usually a blue box for an action that is in progress. And then I've also tried to add pictures. So there is me shooting, and it's definitely going to be a goal. And there's somebody in the goal as well, the goalkeeper. And then there's the second one. There's Ben, right, in red. And there's a red cross on my typical symbol, and there's a blue cross for Friday. And then there's the blue box with lines. And yeah, and Ben is thinking, and there is an arrow going back to Friday when he had started his drinking binge. I didn't draw a smiley or a sad face because I wasn't sure how Ben felt about his realization. But these are basically the tips. So tip number one was to add colors, then add symbols and use them throughout, and add some drawings, because you can see they can be very simple drawings, but I think they make your students laugh. At least they make my students laugh or giggle at times, and also add arrows to show the relationships between different events. Now, look at a technique called extension. And in this activity, in this concept checking, students basically finish a prompt you give them, and they can only finish it if their answer can be logical, if they understand the language that you're concept checking. For example, although it was raining, so we've explained the meaning of although, and now we are concept checking it. Although it was raining, student 1 says, we went out. Well done. Student 2 says, we played football. Right? Can you suggest any other answers? What would student 3 say? We went to the beach, yeah. Bit unusual. We went for a walk, okay, yeah. We went swimming, yeah, perhaps it was raining so much that you went swimming outside. We didn't use the umbrellas, all right. The sun was shining, okay. The party continued. Was that Ben's party that continued? I picnicked in the park. All right, fantastic, yeah. These would be, sort of good answers from your students. They'll show you they understand what although means. Another thing that we can do is personalize the language. A very difficult word there. And can be a referential question with the target language, or a referential question that elicits the response. A referential question is a question that is a real question, right? You don't know what the answer is to that question. And it can also be a personalized extension. So what we saw before, but making it personal. So when the students answer, they can not just make up any sentence, but actually make up, well, say a sentence about themselves that is meaningful. And I think this is a very good follow-up to standard CCQs, a good follow-up to timelines, and any sort of concept checking that is not very personal. Right? And so, for example, we've got the past continuous. You could ask the student, what were you doing yesterday at 8 p.m.? And especially if you know what your student might have been up to. If, they always, for example, watch this soap opera at 8 p.m. Then and also from the answer, you'll feel whether the student understood the concept or they didn't understand it as well. And you can also have an extension. Yesterday at 3 p.m. I was, and the students have to finish it. So perhaps, we mightn't always want to use it on its own. Might be a good idea first to use a standard CCQ, but I think it's the more personalized you can make concept checking, I think the better. So the student already, right after concept checking, they are already producing the new language. Right there, for example, in this case, the past continuous, and they are producing it in a meaningful way. And all right, let's now look at clients. Clients can be useful for any language that can be ranked. For example, degrees of tiredness. So I can say, I'm knackered, I'm wrecked, I'm ready to drop. That means I'm very, very, very tired. Or I can simply say, I'm tired. Then on the other hand, I can say I'm energetic, I'm as fresh as Daisy, or I'm full of beans. So that is useful for concepts and for language that can be ranked, as in here, degrees of tiredness. Can you suggest any other language that we could concept check with clients? Adverbs of frequency, very good, yeah, absolutely. Gradable adjectives, absolutely. Comparatives and superlatives, yeah. Adverbs of degree, vocabulary about certain thing. Feelings, totally, yeah. Cold, yeah. And of course, how hot it is. Emotions, yeah. Functional language, weather. Yeah. And also, we saw the example with I might have. That sort of language we can probably also consider here. Okay, let's move on to our first persona non grata. That's translation. We are, from the very beginning, we are told never ever translate anything. Okay, I've broken this rule more than once. I should probably be in prison for life in an EFL prison. But if you can now try and come up with the advantages and disadvantages of translation in the classroom, or its strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, we've got a poll here, so if you can please put your answers into the poll first. What are the disadvantages, and then what are the advantages of using translation, of course, for concept checking, right? Not translation in other concepts in the classroom, just for concept checking. Okay, we've got quite a few answers already. So we've got 5 disadvantages and 8 advantages. So translation seems no 8 and 8. So we've got a draw. How can we see the answers so that everyone can see them? Okay, yeah, we've got a couple of different answers. Okay. Can everyone see those answers as well, same as me? No? Okay. So we've got students, Verila said that students, hold on, I lost Verila's answer. Yeah, Fatih said students will always rely on this technique. There's no context, Yannick said. They will always translate. Yeah, students will never really understand the meaning of the sentence. They will think in L1. James said they might not translate vocabulary exactly. And they do not think themselves. They get used to it. And let's just very quickly look at the advantages. Yeah, sure, the students get you, yeah. As it's a quick solution, absolutely, as well. You can move faster and immediate understanding, said Larissa. And saves time, helps beginners especially. Students relate to concepts in their own language. Okay. Fantastic. You've got quite a lot of the same ideas that I've got. We can please go back to the slide here, and I'll show you the answers that I came up with. Some of the advantages: quick and accurate. Of course, if you know the students L1, right? And raises students' awareness of L1 versus L2, 3, or 4. And can be a possible mnemonic device. So if you can think that, for example, this word in English, and you're teaching Spanish students, just sounds funny in Spanish, or there is a Spanish word that is very similar. Very often, if the words come from Latin, there'll be a cognate word, and that can be used to remember the words. The disadvantages, you need to know students are one. There's sometimes, or very often, there is no exact translation. And students and the teacher will start relying on it too much. I certainly did when, for a long time, I only taught Spanish-speaking students, and then when I went to Hungary, it was a shock that, you know, you kind of assume that if you're teaching, let's say, a word like intelligent comes up, the student will know because it comes from Latin, and you know there's so many languages like Spanish and French that have the same word or almost the same, right? But then when you're teaching in countries like Hungary, it's just like, well, they have no clue what intelligent might mean, because it doesn't relate to, and it's not similar to anything they've got in their own language. Okay, let's get to the persona non grata number 2. That's the question: do you understand? Right? I'm sure if the ones that you've done the CELTA, they know that we shouldn't ask this question. But what are the advantages of asking, do you understand, the concept check? You can put your answers here. And what are the disadvantages as well, please? Maybe just very quickly, 2 minutes. It's 5-3 disadvantages against advantages. Hey, 6-3, all right. Disadvantages are winning. And let's just, or 7-3, Jesus, no, 7-8-5 now. Can we, let's stop the poll, please, and we'll look at the votes. We'll see what you've written down. Definitely, it seems that you've come up with many more disadvantages. And most students will say yes. That's true. It's a vague question. Understand what? Yeah, it's not very specific. And they always say yes. Yeah, you can't know whether they actually understand. Yeah, that's true. Some pupils are too lazy to speak. That's also true. And let's just look at the advantages. Oh, Larissa doesn't think there are any advantages. Okay. They are easy. This question is easy. That's what Aaron says. Okay. Let's look at the advantages and disadvantages that I've come up with. Advantages. It's probably the most natural question. I mean, for goodness sake, when do you ever in the natural, real world, when do you draw a timeline? You don't really do that, do you? So I think it's just the most natural question to ask. And it's quick and can show what you need to re-clarify. So I think, you know, there is a place for it in concept checking as well. Its disadvantage, yeah, students are too embarrassed to say, sorry, students are too embarrassed to say no, it should be. Yeah, so all the students will say yes. It's a bit of a mistake there. Or students will stay quiet. And we don't really know whether the students understand you or not. So both translation and this question, do you understand, you know, they've got its clear advantages and disadvantages. But I think, you know, with the last 2 slides, I wanted to show you that there is a clear place for them in concept checking and in language teaching in general. You know, they're not all wrong. Of course, you know, they shouldn't be your only technique, but I do think that they can be very useful sometimes, right? If you're teaching, you know, if a word like intelligent comes up and you're teaching Spanish students, why would you go into the trouble of giving them a definition if you can just say inteligente, right? It's very simple to check the meaning of that word. Okay, so let's practice. And this is the first sentence I'd like, well, the first that came up at the very beginning of the presentation. I swerved to avoid hitting a pedestrian. If you can concept check this, please. You can write your ideas in the chat, and we'll check in a minute. Did I change direction? I think, for example, Aaron wrote, did you have to change direction quickly? I think we could break that question into two simpler ones. It's perhaps too long. Was the pedestrian injured? Perhaps we're going too far there. Remember, we're only checking swerve. Okay, let me I'll show you the my suggested answer. Again, it's not the only correct answer. Right? Did you change direction, Aaron? And did you do it suddenly? Yeah, they're much simpler, I think, now, and it's easier for students probably to answer them. So my CCQs were probably, was I driving? Because usually we associate this word with driving, or riding a bike, perhaps you could drive if you are riding a bike as well. And did I turn? Yes, I did. And how did I do it? Suddenly or slowly? Suddenly. Notice that, for example, with the last question, I don't even bother, making it a proper question, i.e. I don't use any subject of verb. It's just suddenly or slowly. So I just try to make it as simple and as obvious as possible for the student. And let's practice number 2. And I have to put up with lazy students. I'm sure you all have to at times or all too often. And try and CCQ, try and concept check this one, please. You can use more than one technique. Actually, try to use different techniques if possible. Am I patient? And I don't think that that question, am I patient, it doesn't check the target language. Do you like lazy students? Okay. Is it a positive or a negative verb? You need to work with lazy students. You like the students? Do I tolerate them? Okay. Perhaps that second question that Aaron wrote, do you have other options than dealing with your students? Perhaps that's a bit too long and too philosophical. Can I avoid teaching lazy students? I'm not sure this concept checks the meaning there. You help these students? Okay. Let me show you my suggested answer. You've all had some really nice ideas there. Lots of different concept checking questions. I started with some CCQs. Is it like tolerate? and is it less formal than tolerate? And of course, I assume that my students will know what the word tolerate means because I might have used it in the explanation. And I'll probably use some extension and I'll personalize it if possible. In a restaurant or on holidays, for example, I can't put up with da da da, and the students have to finish it just to check if they understood the concept correctly, and they start using the target language straight away. Hey, let's go to the third practice. Even though he's short, he's a great basketball player. See if you can use at least two concept checking techniques that we discussed. You can also just write the name of the technique that you would like to use. With this sentence, I think it lends itself nicely to one of the techniques that we've looked at here, that is not CCQ. Right, yeah, as Aaron suggests, we could do extension. Yeah, we could compare even though to other things like but or in spite of. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, is it common to have short basketball players? Yeah, we could ask that. David also suggests extension. Finish the sentence. Okay, let me show you my suggested answers. Go for extension. For example, even though it rained, da da da. Germany lost the game against Poland. Yeah, we're not very good at football. They should have won that game, but we did. And we did win against Germany for the first time in our history. And let's finish it. And how do you only use this sentence if I knew that my students are into football as much as I am, of course. And even though I studied a lot, and the students have finished it. And finally, oh, not finally, last but one, that can't have been him. Okay, thank you, David. Yeah, go Poland. Yeah. Then we drew against Scotland, so it wasn't that good after all. But still, I'm quite proud to have won against the world champions. 2-0, mind you. Very good score. And a lot of you are going for CCQs. Perhaps try and abandon CCQs for now. Think what other techniques that we've seen today could be used here. Not to say that CCQs can't be used here, but I'd like to see if you can timeline maybe, Jerka suggests. A climb path, yeah. Christina also suggests a climb. Yeah. A bit small, I'm sorry about that, but I hope you can see it. I use decline as well. On the top, I've got definitely yes, and on the very bottom, definitely no. So that must have been him, the top, and then that my mate could have been him, that mightn't have been him, that can't have been him. Okay. And I think Yaran is asking about personalization. Yeah, I think it could be a bit difficult to personalize this one because it's used to make deductions about the past. But I'm sure we can come up with something. But okay, we've only got 5 more minutes left, so let's just get to the last practice. I'm going to France next month. How would you concept like this? By the way, this is actually a real sentence. So I think it's also, I haven't mentioned it, but it's very good to, if possible, to use real examples of meaningful language that you either are true for your students or are true for yourself, that they're not just, you know, sort of invented and completely silly examples, but ones, you know, that your students can relate to. Do you plan a timeline? Yeah. Some personal examples, a timeline. Right, yeah. Is it a plan? Okay. So at first, yeah, probably draw a timeline. And if you remember the timeline with Will, this one is slightly different because the thick man Marek with an Air France ticket is in the past, not now. And then there is an arrow from the plane going back to the past because I made the decision in the past and I bought the ticket in the past as well. It's not a decision that I'm making now. And then I've got the red cross for next month, right? So I've also tried to use the tips that we were discussing when it comes to timeline. And I might also CCQ it. Is it a plan? Did I make the decision now or in the past? And I might personalize it as well. I think that's the most logical one at the end. Where are you going or where are you flying next month, next year? And the students tell each other. So I think that's it. Thank you very much for attending it. We've still got a couple of minutes. I don't know if you've got any questions that perhaps you'd like to ask. And here at the end of the slide, got a couple of references to blogs. The EFL recipes is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I stole loads of ideas from these 3 posts. Well, I didn't steal them. I read them and then I converted them into my ideas. But they're fantastic. They're just brilliant. I can't remember whose blog it is, but I can't remember the name. Maybe James does. But this person is just brilliant. His blog is popular. EFL recipes. And then there's using L1 in the classroom. I think that's a very interesting post for those who think that translation has no place in EFL. And then we've also got books, Taking Understanding from Teaching English, and Workman, Concept Questions and Timeline. Yerka is asking, are you presenting any other webinars? Well, at the moment I'm not, but I'd love to. This has been the first one, so I'd love to do some more after. And yeah, thank you all for your lovely feedback here. I'm glad that people enjoyed it. Feel free to contact me. I think the contact details are at the bottom in the box. You can go to TEFL reflections.wordpress.com. That's my blog about teaching, and then I've got TEFL Equity Advocates, and you can contact me through any of those blogs there.
Thank you, Marek. As Marek says, if you have any questions for him, then feel free to put them into the chat box, or there's a question box at the bottom of the page. I have a question for you, Marek. The board work is obviously like a really important part of what you were talking about today. What have you tried to do to make your board work better and more effective? That would be my question for you.
And in all fairness, I haven't tried making it very good, to be honest. I haven't worked on it too much. But so I don't really do what I preach. But I have tried a little bit because I know it's not very good. So I have tried to make my handwriting more legible. I try to write more slowly and more clearly if I can. I've also tried dividing my whiteboard. I can't do it now because I've got a really small board, one of those little ones, portable ones. But I would divide it into sections. So, for example, on the right-hand side, I might have a vocabulary section, and perhaps at the bottom, I might have I don't know, a section for the new language that comes up, and then sort of the biggest section will be for using it during the classroom for presenting some language. But I think just preparing for this webinar and drawing all the timelines and times, that gave me a lot of ideas. And I actually had to draw a timeline for the first time in God knows how many weeks. I drew a timeline for my students. Literally next class after I'd drawn all the timelines for this webinar. And I tried to use all the tips, and it worked out just fine. So I think just perhaps practicing those ideas, I'll definitely try to, use some of the, the ideas from here to improve my board work.
Yeah, thanks. Something I've been thinking about recently with board work is trying to recreate, or trying to create what I would like my students to have in their notebooks, because they do copy you that pretty much exactly. So I try to make sure this is what I'd like them to be writing down, like in this format, in their notebooks. And I found that's kind of made me pay more attention to making it look, at least half decent. Because if you make it look kind of hard to understand, then it's difficult. But then they're going to add it to their own notebooks in a difficult to understand way,
Yeah, and it's an important point that you've just made now, because I've had a lot of students just take pictures of my whiteboard. Now everyone carries a smartphone, and they often ask, "Can I just take a picture?" instead of making notes in class. So
exactly.
Yeah, we have to keep that at the back of my mind, that they might actually, this is how the note will look.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go back to the slide view. Sorry. Just go back to the slides for a moment.
All right, we've got a context slide. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can email me as well.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, feel free to email me if you've got any questions. I just want to say hi. There's my blog. The blog is about teaching, and you can find some links to posts that I've done on concept checking, and also on clarifying meaning. And then there's TEFL Equity Advocates, as James said in the introduction. I set it up to sensitize the public to the problem of discrimination of non-native speakers, and a place for discussion, and different people have published articles there. James has, and so feel free to drop by, and if you'd like to publish an article, definitely get in touch.
Yeah, I definitely would encourage people to look at both of Marek's sites. His blog's great, and also his TEFL Equity Advocates campaign is a fantastic campaign, which I've been very happy to try and support. And he's doing some very good work there to try and do something about the inequality in the TEFL industry. So I highly recommend you take a look at those sites. Okay, so I'd like to thank you for coming to this BELTA webinar, and of course, many thanks to Marek for his great presentation. It was really useful, really interesting. And as I said at the beginning, we are now accepting proposals for next year's BELTA Day on the 25th of April. So if you'd like to join us and speak at our annual conference in beautiful Brussels, just like Marek did last year, so he can vouch for.
It was fun. I do recommend it.
A great time.
It was my first conference.
Thanks, Marek.
And my first presentation. Definitely recommend it. It was great.
Okay, thanks. So yes, if you're interested in speaking, or if not, put it in your diaries. We'd love for you to come and join us on that day. You can find out more information on the link that I've just shared in the chat. And our next Sunday with BELTA is here. It's a little stretched, Adam's face, but I'm sure he won't mind. So 15th of November. At 4 o'clock CET with Adam Simpson. So thanks very much everyone for coming. Thank you, Marek, and we'll see you next month.
Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot, James.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone for attending. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.